Justin and his sister Marissa travel with their dad to Brovania to search for a manuscript for something called the Lost Legend that is buried inside a silver chest that, according to this cover, is guarded by a tiny Viking lady, even though it's not actually that way in the book. And that is the strangest synopsis that you or I have ever heard for a Goosebump book, bar none. What's up, guys? We're going to review today The Legend of the Lost Legend. And for me, guys, this book would have been picked up as a kid in a library, and I would have put it immediately back because this cover art is some weird stuff. It looks very fantasy. It does not really look like a Goosebump cover, and the book itself is kind of fantasy-esque, I would say. A little bit of sci-fi, a little fantasy, that has a Goosebump label smacked on it for whatever reason, because R.L. Stine probably had to get his Goosebump quota done for the week, and that turned out to be Legend of the Lost Legend. Now, I'll say, guys, while I love a lot of Tim Jacobus's work, this, as a kid, would have been one of my least favorite covers by far. I mean, it just does not look interesting, maybe to a kid's eye that's looking for a more scary type of Goosebump book, but this book, I think now the cover art, for whatever reason, has kind of grown on me. This is a book that is sort of one of the lesser known, for sure, not very much talked about cover art and book in general. It's not the prettiest looking Goosebump book, if you want to call Goosebump books pretty. I think some of the color combos, like the greens and the blues and purples, can be nice, but this one's got a very kind of... It's got like a crap brown color with like a puke green. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but all the more reason for me to go ahead and review it for you guys, right? So here we go. The Lost Legend, guys. This book is very strange. I would almost call this, it's not even really a Goosebump book. It's more of like a R.L. Stine Elseworld child drama book with fantasy elements. I have these other books here, guys. You'll notice that I have How I Got My Shrunken Head, A Shocker on Shock Street, and A Beast from the East. These books, along with Legend of the Lost Legend, I think kind of all deserve to be in the same Goosebump in name only Elseworld type of stories. They're very kind of not Goosebumpy. They're not very scary. They have fantastical creatures and fantastical settings about them, but really don't fit the typical Goosebump mold. I would say maybe the closest is Shocker on Shock Street, but certainly How I Got My Shrunken Head with the whole jungle magic, and Beast from the East with all like the Willy Wonka, I don't even know what you want to call it, setting that takes place in, very fantasy-esque, is very much the same with Legend of the Lost Legend. Now, I will give a couple bonus points to this book for a couple things that is not usually done in Goosebump books. For one, there is a very cool and good dog in this book that helps and follows the main characters. I did like that. So it gets a bonus point for a cool dog, just because this is my review and I want to give it a point for having a cool dog in it with two different colored eyes by the way. And I will also say it gets bonus points for having a sibling character that is not annoying and doesn't detract from the story or try to get in the main character's way. It actually really is a duo story in this, that the brother and sister, and they work together fairly well, and that's pretty rare for a Goosebump book. So it gets a gold star for, well, a bronze star for that, let's say. But I would say that this book, guys, is in three phases. The first phase, the first 20, 30 pages of this book, is actually fairly interesting setup for a Goosebump book. They're in this Brovania, this different land with their dad. They're searching for this object, this manuscript, The Lost Legend. Interesting setup. And then they kind of meet with the dog, or the kind of wolf dog that shows them where to go. They follow this dog, hopefully to find what they're looking for. And it was a decent setup. It was interesting. But then the middle portion kind of comes on, and then you meet this person in the book, and it just gets very strange. You meet a human that acts like a pet that's sort of dressed up like a wolf or something in the book. and they're supposed to follow that character, and that was my least favorite character in the book for sure. Just not very interesting. There's giant cats involved for some reason. It's so weird, guys. The world that they're in ends up being fake. By the way, if it wasn't obvious, this is going to be spoilers for this book. It's God knows how old. It's probably 30 years old, and it's only 120 pages. So if you want to read it and you don't want spoiled, I guess stop the video and go check it out and read it in 2 hours. But yeah, the world ends up being fake. A lot of the fantasy elements that you buy into and that get set up in this book end up to be artificial, which was totally kind of strange and subversive in a bad way as the reader, in my opinion. I was like, why did we set all this up just to show that it was fake at the end? Didn't make any sense. So I like to say the first 20 to 30 pages of setup in this book are very good. It's at least interesting enough for a Goosebump book. The middle 70, the chunky part of this book, is no good. It's kind of bad. It's poop, crappy, brown like this cover. And the last 20 or strangely enough, the last 20 or 30 pages of this book actually end on a very interesting, kind of dreadful ending, which I appreciated. The ending of this was a little bit goosebumpy. So we had a beginning fantasy portion that was pretty good, a middle chunk of 70 pages that was crap, and then that little bit of goosebump, good ending, good twist ending. It wasn't even so much of a twist, but they kind of are trapped there forever once, that they find the object that they were looking for the whole time. They open it up, and inside they find out that whoever owns the manuscript, the lost manuscript, is actually lost forever, which I thought was shockingly a pretty interesting ending and ended a little bit more dreadful than a typical Goosebump book. But guys, I wanted to point out to you that this book and some of the Goosebump books really kind of fall into this Elseworld kind of category for me. And Legend of the Lost Legend is a very middle of the road Goosebump book. I really wanted to check it out, and I wanted to tell you guys what I thought of it. And for me, this book is like a 6.5 out of 10. A couple elements of it are okay, interesting enough. A bad middle, main characters that are okay to follow, but overall, just a middle of the road Goosebump book in every sense. I felt compelled to talk to you guys about it because that's what we do on this channel. If there's something Goosebump that I like, I want to talk to you guys about it. And here we go. So yeah, Legend of the Lost Legend. If you guys like the review, please give me a like. If you have a comment about this story, if you've read it, leave a comment. I'll be glad to talk to you about it. But overall, guys, yeah, that's Goosebumps. But love the artwork always. Sometimes you get surprised by these books. Sometimes they're okay. And sometimes you leave a little bit disappointed. That was probably The Legend of the Lost Legend for me. But you never know what you're going to get. That's what's awesome about Goosebump books. Thanks for watching, guys.